I'm really excited to share a report on CMCT because these past 2 years have been traumatic with the pandemic. And we're emerging out of it. And there are some very crucial facts that I would like to bring to you and to your attention. Before I go into this little PowerPoint report and work my way through it, let's put up a slide, the first slide with Colleen Reddit on it. And there she is. She'll be 83 on her next birthday. And something very special has happened to her within the past 2 weeks. Manu Phillip, who was here when I was a couple of years back more, he came with me. And he's now the CEO in full charge. And Colleen does a little, very little. She just keeps her finger on the pulse. Founders are not easy just to be replaced. But 2 weeks ago, the Indian government came to Philip to say, as a government, we would like to honor Colleen Reddit and give her what they called a Lifetime Achievement Award. He was blown away. This was top government officials coming to say, we will arrange a program to do this presentation in your chapel in CMCT. So they organized it. Philip worked with them, and, you know, high Hedians from the government were there. The Deputy Chief Minister for the Tamil Nadu estate was there. And there was 3 or 4 top-notchers who then gave a speech to acknowledge her work and her worth over 60 years. And she was so pleased just to get this honor. It was on television. It was in the newspapers. All the media were there. There was 200 people, mainly Hindus, in the chapel, acknowledging. And she had her hair done for that day. She was looking stunning in a blue outfit. And she's in a wheelchair now. She's really unable to walk. She shuffles along with a kind of little tripod. But she suffers so much pain in walking. And she's pretty frail. She has no sight to read now. She can't read text or read her Bible. Her sight has deteriorated to that extent. But that day, and they had it, very fortunate for us, they had it streamed. So I was watching it on YouTube. I couldn't hear the speeches in Tamil, but Philip got 10 minutes to explain the work of CMCT. And that is just a miracle, that a Hindu government would not only honor her, but give the opportunity for an explanation. So he had a beautiful PowerPoint done, illustrating the soup kitchen work, the handicraft work, the sponsorship work, the school work. And of course, he emphasized all the time just that they're there as an organization to help the poor of the poorest and to give humanitarian help. And you have to be so wise that you don't overplay, we're here to see people saved and preach the gospel. You have to, and I helped him a little. I said, you need to convey that all that you're doing is to show the people the love of God. And he said, that's helpful just to use that kind of phrase. And so it just was a momentous moment for them to get that honor. And, you know, there was some people in the organization, some of the staff, they were uneasy because the party that came, the political party that came, outside the big center that they had the streets lined with banners, you know, announcing this event. And so some of the people weren't all that pleased that a political party were coming, you know, to do this. And that was, to me, a bit short-sighted, but there's nothing easy in Christian work. You've always got somebody shooting you down when you do something. So that was a very special moment. So everybody here in a measure knows the work of CMCT, but I just want to run back through and highlight tonight some of the things. Pray for Colleen, especially for her physical health. She has a lady that she's brought up all her life, Vimala. She lives with her. And over her lifetime, she's brought up 17 girls who had been abandoned or who were in such destitute circumstances. She took them in and treated them as her family. And she still has 4 girls, ranging from Miriam Grace will now be about 20, 21, Marlene, Tabitha, and Tanya. 4 girls that she would consider to be her family. And it's not easy. For Vimala really is their mother, although Amma, is recognized by them. And the last time that we had a board meeting, she was sharing that one of the girls was playing up, as a teenager can do. This particular girl, Tabitha, would be about 14, and Colleen, they were tearing their hair out, just her antics. She wouldn't go to school, and she was a bit rebellious. And as it turned out, she is the sponsored child from my PA, Jan Goodall. So she was interested to say, I need to get praying for this girl. And so Philip has helped get her back on the rails a bit. But the reality of life is for them the same as it is for families back here as girls grow up as teenagers. So pray for Colleen, who is helped by Vimala, who does the cooking and looks after it. And Vimala is in charge of the hostel of about 70 girls that have been brought in because they're either orphans or their parents are unable to look after them. And so for years, they've been providing this kind of facility. And Colleen just needs your prayers for her health and just even for her spirit to be up. She's easy, not just down a little months in 2021. Philip put this together, and he was quoting Lamentations. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Despite the ravages of the pandemic, God has been good to CMCT in so many ways. So let's go on to the next slide, boys. One of the blows that they sustained last year was the death of one of the executive directors. They have 4 directors, and Daniel was in charge of all the medical side of the work of CMCT, and he took poorly, and then they discovered that he needed to have a triple bypass. So he was taken into hospital, scheduled to get the bypass, but before he got to the operating theatre, he died. It was a blow. His widow, Agnes, they had 1 daughter. Wee Sally was 13, or is 13, 14, and they were just devastated. And it really rocked to work because he had such a central part to play. And that would just reflect that quite a number of staff lost family members through COVID. In India, it was very serious because for a very long time there was no vaccinations, and lockdown was very severe in India. It was quite brutal. So those that lost friends and loved ones need our prayers. Next slide. Now, just looking at India itself and catch some of the facts. 35 million cases of COVID, nearly 500,000 deaths with COVID. In Tamil Nadu, which is the state where Chennai is, 2.7 million with nearly 40,000 deaths. And so the COVID virus swept through India, and the Indian government imposed such strict shutdown and lockdowns to such an extent that we had to, in CMCT, rise to the challenge of feeding people who were starving. Next slide. Because what we decided to do, and I worked with Philip to come up with this solution, we run what we called a Helping Hand project. Philip said, essentially what was happening was that the lockdown was of such a nature that most of the ordinary working people then had to remain at home, no work, no wages, no money, no food. And that consequence happened immediately, wasn't it? To say, well, we've some money in the bank and we can live on our resources for a while. And so Philip says, John, as an organization, Christian organization in the city, we need to rise up and help. I said, okay, what to do is design a little food package. If we see the next slide, that's them being handed out. Aaron's handing it out. And they made up a food package. Rice, tea powder, masala items, dal, sunflower, flour, spices, and of course things relating to the COVID with hand wash and all that kind of thing. And that cost £10 a package. And I said, okay, I'll do my utmost to raise funds and we'll see what the Lord can raise. We set out with a budget of 60,000. And over that period last year, I raised 150,000. And we fed 20,000 people with these food packages. And again, when they went out into the community, you can see just going out from CMCT, they were able to express to the people, we're a Christian organization. We're doing this because of the love of God for people. And it was that kind of communication without hard preaching. You have to be careful in India or you're accused of proselytizing and forcing people to become Christians. So the Helping Hand was an amazing project. The staff went out, and what Philip found very interesting, they linked up with other evangelical organizations and churches, and there was a great sense of unity amongst others that joined in this operation and helped the Helping Hand. Next slide. Here's the success of it. Able to connect with many unreached people, show them the love of God. Able to partner, as I've said, with a number of churches in different parts of the state of Tamil Nadu. And able to network with many other Christian NGOs. Sometimes we're very guilty in the brethren, they're just doing our own thing. And there's a great need at times for cooperation with other organizations, Christian organizations and churches. The big fella in the top slide there is David Prabhaka. He is in charge of the leprosy work in the villages where they reach out to the lepers. He's a very able fellow. And the second slide is Aaron. And you can see when they were in distribution mode, they put up a great banner to announce who they were. Christian Missions Charitable Trust, helping people, helping India in crisis. And so the people were getting the message. Here is what Christianity is about, helping people, reaching out with a helping hand. And they went beyond the city boundaries at times to the unreached people. As you could see, just some of the shacks that people are living in. It's difficult to convey how basic are the living conditions of India. And for those who've never been and never actually witnessed that kind of thing, it's hard to take it on board. Next slide. And the staff, of course, went out, as you can see here, illustrated with their masks and with these bags of rations and in the distribution. They kept going despite at times being totally locked down. And the staff, for example, we were able to implement what we've called a salary revision. Last year, the staff, it costs 50 grand a month to pay the salaries of the staff. We have 325 staff in all the ministries. And for years, they have not been paid enough. And it's been a great burden to those of us on the board. And we kept saying, we need, as a Christian organization, we need to pay a minimum wage. And so it takes a lot of faith, because to cover the costs each month, £105,000 is needed each month to cover all the costs for all the departments. If you take 325 people and their wages to start with, then the staff that are serving serve because they're committed to the Lord and have endured low wages. But praise God, we have been able to lift the wage level, and it's been a blessing to many, because we talk about the cost of living crisis here. Then the cost of living crisis is all over the world. And in India, particularly, the prices went up through the roof. And rents and food and rice and oil and dal and basic commodities got so expensive. And it's so difficult for the staff just to live. Next slide. Now, this is very interesting. A crucial year, because they have what they call, in the first part there, renewal of the Fcra certificate. This is a license that the government issues to organizations, NGOs or charities, that allows them to bring funds from outside India. Without that license, you can't bring any funds into India. Now, the valid date for CMCT and all the others too was to be last December. The 31st of December, that date when it arrived, you needed to have your license renewed by then, or there was no way you could bring any funds in. And right up to the last minute, on the 31st of December, the government said, we're not able to renew licenses, but we'll extend it for 3 months. And so January, February, March, they allowed the license to be extended. And during that period, we were sweating and praying and just waiting to see what the answer would be. Because many NGOs, as they call them, many charities had their license revoked and not renewed. One of the great Christian organizations that lost out was an organization, you may have heard of them, called Compassion. You heard of Compassion? It's worldwide. It's a wonderful organization. But the government accused them of preaching the gospel too strongly. And so they revoked, and they were kicked out of India. And so that's just how serious it is, and therefore you're walking in eggshells. And so we were going through the first 3 months and trusting. And as the end of March drew near, we were in the same boat as we were at the end of December. No license renewed. And then the government came forward just a few days ago to say, we're extending the valid license that you have till the end of June. So we're praying that between now and the end of June, where we've got freedom to bring funds in, that we'll get a 5-year license, which is called Fcra. It's all about foreign currency, coming into the country. Now, just for your own information, we get funds from around the world because Colin is from New Zealand. So there's a lot of folks in New Zealand support her, and Australia, and a number of people in Malaysia. Not so much from America, very little from America, although she used to be friendly with Louis Palau, and through his organization, people would have sent some money. But in the UK, the funds that are raised for CMCT in a year amount to 700,000. That's absolutely unbelievable. From all sources, people who sponsor children, then that's part of that 700. And I do a bit of fundraising. I can't believe just over the years how much God has helped me. I must have raised, at a low estimate, $500,000 over these years. God's people, particularly, if you don't mind me saying this, in Northern Ireland, are very generous to mission work and to support God's work. In fact, I got word today from one of the trusts that support us to say, we're just forwarding you the first gift for this year, which is $75,000 from one trust. And these are friends that I know very well. And so it takes a huge amount of money to run this organization, but God has been faithful over all these years. And a matter for prayer is that we would get this 5-year license before the end of June and comply with the government and keep on the right side of the government. The renewal of the charity status has been confirmed. They still accept that we're a charity. But one of the things they've done in the Indian government, which is point 3, they moved all the NGOs and charities banks to New Delhi. We were working through Chennai. No, they said, all the money coming into India needs to come through New Delhi. And as a government, they will see in that banking arrangement, all the money is coming into India. And so they can check, what is it coming for? What is it being used for? They are so strict. It's not that long ago that the government sent in 3, what do you call them, chartered accountants or people of that nature, auditors, 3 auditors, external auditors. They spent 5 days examining every detail on how the operation works, looking at the books, where did this money come from, what was it designated for, what was it used for, and they went through the whole of CMCT like a fine-tooth comb. Now, when they arrived, Philip was uptight, but he said, you know, at the end of the week, John, they were amazed. He said they became very friendly with us because they couldn't believe the work that we're doing for the little money that's coming in, as they seen it. They said, we have seen many other organizations with much greater funds than yours doing a lot less. And it was a great testimony to these external auditors. And just to do the thing right and to keep on the right side of the government is so crucial. But they've got all that banking system worked out. All funds now go through New Delhi, and then they go down to Chennai to the local bank, and then they're worked through that system. I think I've mentioned the scrutiny of the central government with the auditors. Next slide. How are we doing for time? One of Colleen Redditt's dreams years ago was, because she's been involved in building things all her life. The centre that she's in at the moment, it's a 5-story centre. And way back years ago, the year 2000, 22 years ago, she built that. She built a school. She built a retreat centre. She built all the houses at Chinnacoupam. And God has given her an amazing insight to buy land that was cheap when it was cheap, and to put these buildings up. But her dream was to build, we would call an old folks' home, Bethany care home for the elderly. Because the people that are being looked after in the slums with the soup kitchen people, maybe there were about 6 soup kitchens, and about 30, 40, maybe 50 people a day come into the soup kitchen. 2 social workers go down from CMCT and prepare a lovely hot meal and meet with these people, basically who live in the pavement. They're just destitute. And they come in and they sing a few choruses and they show them love and they give them the gospel message. Many's a time when I've been there, I have preached in these slum areas in the soup kitchens. And Colleen said, when some of these dear elderly folk arrive with no family to care for them, and the family they do have doesn't care for them, she said, could we no build a home and give them, for the last months or years of their life, some comfort? So we've been in the process. You can just see a bit of a picture there. That home is now finished after 4-5 years. And we're hoping to open it in September and start small, maybe with 10 residents coming in off the street that'll get vetted and surveyed and be suitable, and put in a doctor and a nurse and people to care. And this has been built on land that we have. When she built the retreat centre out of Chennai, it's not near the other functioning centre that we work with. There's plenty of land, so we didn't buy land for this. We just built it on the land that we have. So, Colleen, we had hoped to have opened it ideally on the 4th of February this year, when it would have been our birthday. That's our birthday. Birthdays are big, big occasions in India. They go off their head with celebrations. I've been quite a number of her birthdays on the 4th of February. I think Kathy was with me at her 75th or her 70th birthday, and there's hundreds turn up, because in Indian culture, birthdays are mad. But we didn't make it for the 4th of February, so we're planning for September to put things together and open this Bethany care home. Next slide. Here is the key people in CMCT. Colleen herself, pray for her. Can you remember Manu Philip being here, the fellow with the hair on the beard? You not remember him? He was here with Ezekiel and Philip on a Sunday morning. Philip is an outstanding fellow. I'm on the phone nearly every day because I can use WhatsApp and get it free. And I keep in touch with him all the time. He's a qualified accountant. He's a qualified lawyer. He is very able intellectually. And he is married. He married one of the girls that Colleen brought up, Caroline. So he calls Colleen his mother-in-law. And you know what mother-in-laws can be like. So it's not always sweetness and light, I can tell you, with Philip and Colleen. Because she's very straight, and so is he. So they can rub each other up. And Philip and Caroline have 2 boys, Kelvin and Alvin. And please pray for them as a family. And pray for his workload, making decisions, keeping in line with the government, and pushing the organization to a much higher professional level. All the years that Colleen would have been functioning, it was more just her baby. She made decisions and off the top of her head, and they just, worked on that kind of basis. But Philip has introduced a high level of professionalism. Security, the drivers, a lot of the maintenance work that's involved. And then Aaron, the younger fellow, he's in charge of the programming of their work, like the spiritual end of designing and carrying out programs. For example, we call it child development program. What they mean by that is they have a program in one of the slums to try and rescue children that don't go to school, give them some education, give them some discipline in life, and train them and rescue them. And there's huge challenges in these areas, and he is responsible for that. And then this is the medical superintendent that was appointed to replace Daniel, who died 320 of the staff in all the different departments. Sponsorship department is a very key department to communicate. Over the pandemic, it's been a nightmare because they weren't able to bring the children in as they would normally do, teach and train them on a Saturday morning, communicate with them and communicate with sponsors. The communication through the pandemic just broke down. It's just so they're getting up and running now and trying to get email addresses, and rather than use letters and postage, work through emails and modernize the whole organization. So you have the sponsorship department, the program department, you have the hospital and medical. That's a lovely ministry for the poorest of the poor to come in to a clinic and have free health care and a little, I think there's 16 beds in the little hospital, and they've got a dental and dementia. What happens is they bring doctors in and pay them that they can then give expert quality care to patients coming in. And so the poorest of the poor in the slums don't lose out if they can come to CMCT. So enough. I wanted to just leave time for prayer. Maybe even if you have a question, somebody might think, well, what about this, what about that? If you have a question, I'm happy to take any questions. And then I would love what I've been saying, you would pick up on that and just pray for Colleen and Philip and the staff. Pray for to keep on the right side of the government and to function effectively. Just another piece of good news, without getting into too much detail. He texted me yesterday to say we have just succeeded in obtaining what he calls 80G tax exemption. And it means a wee bit like gift aid. If an Indian person wants to give support to CMCT, or an Indian company, wants to give, then we've now got a certificate for tax exemption. Like here in this company, if somebody gives a gift, you can claim gift aid. Well, that's the same similar in India. And we just got word about that yesterday. So Philip was delighted that we've got a breakthrough there, because there is a need, and some on the board are very strong in this issue. We should become less dependent on support from the West, and we should try to increase the support from within India. Now that's a good theory, but it's a bit like Africa. There's a lot of wealth now in Africa, but the African church still thinks the West is responsible to fund it. And I have a national workers fund for African missionaries. I run that alongside my work for CMCT, and I can tell you the need for African missionaries who are full-time to be supported from the West is huge. For the first 3 months of this year, I have sent £25,000 to African missionaries. I have one or two friends even in this church that support this National Workers Fund every month and send it to them. And others support. I have to just make good contact with a few boys that have a few pounds, you know. And God has been very gracious to me to lead me to people. I don't have the money. I'm living by faith the same as everybody else that's in the Lord's work. But I've met a lot of wealthy people. And I usually put a wee plug in for India, or for CMCT, or for my national workers. I met a couple of weeks ago. They said, we've just taken over a trust. Oh, I said, that's good. They said, could we help? Oh, I said, I accept it. They sent me £12 grand. CMCT. Then they sent me £8 grand for my national workers fund. Now, I never asked them, but they came across my path. That's how God works. That's how God works. And Kathy says, I'm amazed at how God has used to raise funds for the Lord's work. And pray for the resources that will be needed and raised for the Lord's work to continue. And may God help us, each one, to be responsible, to give to others, and to support others. So, any questions on CMCT? Sure.
Do all the workers live within the site, or do they have houses?
No, travel. Good point, John. In India, if you ever go to India and travel by bus, then you put your life at risk. Traffic is horrendous. And a lot of the staff would live at a fair distance from the centre, so they have to come by bus or by train. So during the lockdown, it was a nightmare, because the transport was off under lockdown, they couldn't get rid of it. So that is one of the factors. And they don't have cars. It's all public transport. And if you see buses passing, you think, how many people are on that bus, hanging out the doors and down the aisles, jammed in? But people have to travel a good distance. The trains are very popular, and not just buses, but lots of travelling done by train for the staff to come into work. Good point.
Does the Russian-Ukraine situation, does the Russian-Ukraine situation affect India?
It doesn't, but it was interesting yesterday. For the first time, India has come out and expressed their concern for how Russia are acting against Ukraine. India, because of the Hindu and China, these big nations have sat on the fence and haven't necessarily declared support for one or the other. And only yesterday did India this is the Indian government, come out up front to say that they are supportive of Ukraine. But that's the only way that it would affect much.
Are they within the United Nations or whatever?
Sorry?
Are they within the United Nations?
Oh yes, they're part of all. But sometimes what happens in the UN, as China do, they just abstain. And they sit on the fence. And with all due respect, the UN has no teeth. It has no power to really. There's a lot of rhetoric. You know, this should happen and this is terrible. But Russia and China veto any resolutions that they put forward to the UN. So the thing's null and void. And India was sitting in that kind of category as well until yesterday. Any other questions? Yes?
I mentioned, John, that Indian woman who had been appointed
Yes,
mayor.
very good point.
Do you think that will have a major effect?
Well, I asked Philip. Philip knows this one. The recent appointment within the government.
So they mentioned it, what we used to do.
That there.
No, it's not.
I think the bathroom is
That's
nice on
not
it.
that. So you don't need
If you use the lectern one,
Okay.
That's better.
That better? This lady, who has been appointed the mayor of Chennai, is from a Dalit background. A Dalit is the poorest of the poor in India. But legislation is that from time to time, someone from that community has to be appointed. And it so happens that this particular lady is a believer. Now, what difference it will make, Philip is a bit sceptical. Because in political terms, sometimes it's not to your advantage to have a Christian trying to either push or trying to defend Christian causes. It's got to be understood that in India, the Hindu Prime Minister and the Hindu government are opposed to Christianity. But Philip has plans to meet this mayor and see what will become. You have to be that careful not to appeal to politicians to help you, or it can lead to all difficulties and kind of things. But it's from a sovereign point of view, from God's point of view, it's a wonderful blessing that a Christian has been appointed into such, a high position.